Oh, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Stephen. Yeah, another warm day in sunny Holland. I have a fellow European living guest with me today. I'm not sure how warm it is.
A living guest. We
A
interview
living
dead
guest,
people.
a living
Wow,
guest.
that is awesome.
Yeah.
So,
Well, yeah. Well, you know, we want to make it interesting, Steve. We'll talk to anybody.
okay, that's
So,
fair.
yeah, I guess today is living as I think he's still living anyway in Finland. He's going to tell us a lot more about that, I think. A brief introduction from me. They call him the blockchain Gandalf, but he has a real name as well. That's Keir Finlow-Bates. I've been following him because I've been walking through the woods with him while he's been talking about the blockchain. That's how I discovered Keir. I also went and bought his book, which, to be totally honest, I absolutely loved, but only understood about 60% of it. But that's more to do with my own brain capacity than what you actually put in the book. We share quite a few things in common. You had a basic education here in Holland, I think, from 1978. You were in Velp, which is that Velp near Arnhem?
And that's right, yeah.
Okay.
Just south of the Veluwe, and then the Hague from 1983 or so onwards.
Yeah. But the Hague International School in The Hague I know really well. I lived in The Hague for 15, 20 years. So yeah, we share that in common. And then after that, off back to the UK to do lots of very academic things, lots of diplomas. You've got a PhD in maths, I think. And then there's sort of a period where from what I understood from the book, a little bit of life, a little bit of living in the UK, some punk music, some indie music, and then all of a sudden you're back traveling again and up to Finland, where the journey stops or starts with the glorious blockchain. Now, that's as much as I know, Keir. Perhaps you can fill in some of the holes as to where we go from here or where we don't.
You don't know what he eats
or...
for breakfast or dinner or like what he did yesterday?
I'm amazed that I know so much, Steve, because you know I don't normally know too much about the guests.
That's right. I normally know nothing, so it works out well for me. So.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, I married a Finnish woman who I met in Cambridge, and that's why I moved to Finland. Or maybe it was the low taxes and the cheap alcohol and the lovely warm climate. You know.
I like the way you're thinking.
Yeah, obviously Steve's never been to Finland.
I have actually. So yes, I know there's no warm climate. So, and I know he was being sarcastic. So I'm just not another pretty face here. I know that's what I'm here for. I'm here for the sexiness, but I do actually have a clue sometimes. So, but I'm fascinated. Just your whole life story is fascinating. So you pick it up, or David, you have him pick it up wherever you want. Don't all jump in.
I was waiting for a question. You know?
Well, here I'll have a question. David told me, I guess he read your book. And like I said, I've looked at the pictures. It's very nice. You started in the blockchain in 1987-ish?
No.
The
David, blockchain was invented in 2008, 2009.
That's what I thought. Okay.
An unknown person or persons called Satoshi Nakamoto. And I stumbled across the white paper. It's only 8 pages or so long. It's really short. Back in 2010, when I was working for a company making software for satellite navigation. And I found the technology described in the paper fascinating. So I spent the first 3-4 years kind of in my spare time digging into how it worked. And and then the company I was working for laid off 10% of their workforce, including me. And that was in 2015. And that was when I decided to go full-time blockchain. So, but I've been messing around with computers since 1981. I know that because of the ZX81.
Yeah,
so
the Spectrum.
Dave remembers that.
Yeah.
Spectrum was the next one. ZX81 was the black and white one. Was the precursor. So, and then a Spectrum.
Yeah, those were the days. Huh? So I'm trying to load all these programs up on a cassette tape, and
oh god, yeah. Get some again. You had bootleg copies of copies, and so it would take maybe 10 goes to load the game onto the computer, and that meant you were spending 40 minutes. And my kids complain because the PlayStation takes 40 seconds to boot up.
They don't remember dial-up internet or any of that fun stuff that we all grew up with, where it would take 3.5 hours to send one email.
Yeah, so. Well, they think a phone is shaped like this, right?
Right. That's very. We had this dialogue. I have a phone I bought for my first house. I still have it. It's a butcher block AT&T phone, but it has the buttons instead of the dial. And so, and my stepson was like, "What's that?" I'm like, "That's called a phone," because he's 12, and I'm like. He goes, no, this is what us dinosaurs used. And before that, it had this thing where you had a rotary dial. And he's like, oh, and then of course they see movies, not really, but 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, even in the 80s, where, if they had to go do something, they had to go make a phone call. And nowadays it's like, well, why are they running to a phone booth? I'm like, because this thing only came out in 81, so to speak, for the public, with Motorola's brick where you could kill somebody. I said, but that's it. So they don't get that. So I get a kick out of when they are impatient for 40 seconds. I'm like, listen, it took us 3 minutes to get a tone back in the States for AOL or Earthlink or whoever it was when we were using dial-up back in the day.
My daughter asked me the other week why it was an 80s American sitcom, can't remember which one, maybe Family Ties, and she was asking, why is there a long string running from the phone across the screen?
Right.
That's the cable.
It's can't without. And then they came out with the wireless phone, and if you had one of those for the house, that you were like cool because you could leave the kitchen and go sit in another room. And when they first came out, of course, you could go 2 feet away, and that was about it. And so now with all this new technology, it's funny because you look back and you just kind of chuckle, like, how did we do it before? And it's kind of like the blockchain. Because back in my real job, we were introduced to the blockchain in 2009 or 2010 with the bank out of New York. And they were playing with it. So we were playing with it back then. So I was like fascinated with it. So I was like, this is very cool. And they were talking about smart contracts and this and what they could do with it. And then everybody one day woke up and it became, I think Bitcoin woke everybody up because you're like, oh, this is interesting. So I'm not sure if Bitcoin helped or hurt it.
So you were working at a bank?
No. We had a consulting firm. We did investment banking.
Okay.
So we had a client that was a bank who said to us, we're looking at this new technology. What do you guys think? And we looked at it and we're like, this is phenomenal. And when it develops, we thought it would be awesome. And when computing, I guess they call it quantum relativity now, so quantum computing, when it got to a point where that was where it really needed to be, I in my opinion, and you know more because you have the PhD in math, but I think then the blockchain, if you will be what they're hoping it would be.
Okay. Yeah, because the banks kept that very quiet. They were, the public impression you got, because I've not worked for a bank, I just used them, is that they initially ignored it and then started rubbishing it. So
the one bank that we dealt with, we were doing work for them, the head of treasury and their CFO, we were in a meeting with them, and I won't say the bank name. And I can see it in my mind. In fact, we were in New York a couple of weeks ago and we passed it. And I was like, look, that's the bank, and everybody was like, yeah, great. So, but they were very this is awesome. They really got it. They knew what they could do with it. They saw the future. And I was like, that's really, and then we were like, okay, well then how do we go to the next steps with it? So like I said, it was 09 or 10 that we saw it and we were like, this is very, very cool. So I've been following it ever since then, and then seeing it kind of develop and morph into what it can be. And then a few years ago, we were talking to some of the large auction houses and saying it's a great way to have provenance on art. It's a great way to have provenance on this and that. So we were doing things in that realm. And now, of course, you have ticketing and you've got NFTs, if you will, and other things. But to me, it's more for practical matters, things that down the road at some point, I'm sure it'll be used for everything. But right now it's where's the value of it? And I think in certain things, there's a lot of value.
Yeah, there's a lot of different sort of models and approaches you can take when you look at it. And one of the things I found funny about it was that it's every 3 to 6 months when I think about how have my thoughts changed on this? It's all the time, it's changing in my mind. So at the moment, I'm approaching it very much from, it's a massive database with very fine tuned control as to who can edit what.
Right.
Because I'm looking at identity and access management in particular at the moment. But no matter what topic I'm looking at technologically, there's a sort of angle there, and it is incredibly early. And this is the thing, when you go on places like LinkedIn and you get a lot of people criticizing it, people talk about it, oh, it's like the internet in 1995. It may be more like the internet in sort of the late 80s even.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so before all the browser wars and
Right.
that kind of stuff. It's just that now we have all these means for members of the public to find out about this stuff. You know, back in the 80s, you had to be working at a university or in the military or something like that, or read about it in a magazine. Now there's just so many bulletin boards and websites, so any information you can find it, which makes me pull my hair out, because my kids have all this stuff at their fingertips and they come to me to ask me how to find stuff with Google. I find it disturbing, because they're described as digital natives.
Right.
And it's kind of like they've had it since birth, so they don't know how to use it. I think it's the best way to describe it.
And when we were all kids, we had a good library.
It's not like you're living up to your name, then, Keir, that you are in fact Gandalf, so they expect you just to magic all this information.
Well, as far as they're concerned, I do. Actually, both me and my wife seem to end up, like we have au pairs, because I've got quite a lot of kids. And they're all, you know, typically they're millennials. And they're just sort of coming to me saying, how do I find the bus times? And it's like, well, you Google it, but it's in Finnish. It's like, that's why you use Google Translate. And it's like a little light bulb goes on. Oh gosh, yes, I could use Google Translate and Google Search together. I hadn't thought of that. And you sort of think, aren't you meant to be able to do this naturally? And I guess when some of the stuff is too easy, that you get complacent. And then when you end up sort of having to move outside of the comfort zone of everything just being handed to you on a plate, suddenly you find that you don't have the skills to combine stuff. And maybe actually I'm being unfair to them, because I think that probably goes across the board in every generation, that most people, if they're put in an unfamiliar situation, just kind of freeze.
But do you think, though, our generation was a little different, because we actually, if we had we didn't have this, right? We either you read the newspaper or watched the news, which was on, you know, at 6 o'clock or 7, depending on where you lived. Or if you needed something, your parents either had the Encyclopedia Britannica, which was great, because if they all fell on you, you could wipe out a civilization, or you had to go to the library, and you actually had to read and look. And I like to read, which David knows. So I'm still very much, I like to read, whether it's a book, a paper, or whatever I'm reading on the internet, a magazine, so to speak. But I like that reading to learn. I think today everything is snippets, right? It's TikTok. It's 30 seconds. What can I learn in 30 seconds? And I think, and I don't know if it's a millennial, I think it's people that are, if you will, 40 and younger, or maybe 50 and younger. They didn't go through what anybody 50 and over did. Like, you know, telephone, going to a library, and, you know, where you had to actually think and do and whatever. Nowadays, it's just sort of like, give me, get me, I want. So I think that and I don't mean this in a bad way, their thinking ability is a little different than what the old school thinking different. The old school is like, you have to go, you do, and that's it. Nowadays, it's like, well, why can't I go do this? I don't get it. Why isn't it on the internet? We're like, you're not special that you came in 300th. You know, you still have to do things. And I don't think kids understand that to this day, because, you know.
I don't know. It's just so easy to fall into the kids today trap.
Yeah.
And I feel it, and then I have to sort of check myself, because every generation thinks they're the best. And it's obviously,
I'm not saying we were the best generation. My generation probably sucks. Like, you know,
Gen
we're
X
the worst.
is the best. I mean, there's no, but the thing is that every generation has different strengths and weaknesses. And so, you know, I'm there in the 80s, and my parents are saying, you know, God damn it, you're on the computer again. You know, you've spent 2 hours playing these games. You really think you're going to get a job from this? And I just sort of went, whatever, because I was a teenager. And but I did, right? So who knows? I mean, maybe having a 20-second attention span, a 10-second attention span is going to turn out to be a vital skill in 10 or 15 years time. And
Sure.
we're going to be there trying to stop ourselves from actually doing proper research and investigating stuff. And they're going to be streaming past us because they're, we don't know what the survival skills in society are going to be. I mean, I doubt it, but then again, my parents doubted that all those hours of gaming in the 80s that I engaged in were going to be useful. And yet, some of the skills like being able to adjust the cassette deck head with a screwdriver, it's like the equivalent of surgical skills I got from that.
Right.
And that's a skill that has come in handy many, many times since. And being able to recognize from the sound of a modem dialing up or a cassette head playing what exactly is going on, it carries over into fixing washing machines and things like that. So, it's those skills that I'm pretty sure attracted my Finnish wife to me in the first place. So,
because you can fix a washing machine. Sure, that's a very attractive skill.
Yeah, well, I was just doing that today.
With a screwdriver, as opposed to just picking up the phone and asking for someone to come and do it for you.
Exactly, yeah. So you see, and you never know what the skills that you learn when you're a teenager. Suddenly, you're 50 years old in Finland, and it's vital to the survival of your marriage. So who knows?
You were a big gamer then, Keir?
Well, I mean, it was a ZX Spectrum, and but and I don't feel that I spent excessive amounts of time on it, but my parents did. And then Dad brought home a PC 5150, which I loved partially because it.
Yeah. So that was the Amstrad. Or not?
No, this was he actually had the IBM. He was working for Shell Metals at the time. So they had an IBM machine, and the model was PC 5150. And I remember that because it was the name of my favorite album at the time by Van Halen. So, that I played with that, and that got me into DOS. And then I learned machine code programming. I had this fascinating book called Programming the 8086/8088.
Which are the chip numbers.
Yeah, those are the Intel processors.
And that is riveting reading. So
I know
it's a page turner.
Yeah, we went on holiday to Limburg for 2 weeks, and it rained solidly, and I didn't have the computer, but I had that book, and it was the only thing I had for entertainment. And on day 3, I just thought, I can't continue to stare out the window at the wet Dutch countryside. I'm going to read this book. And it only took 4 or 5 days, and then suddenly something clicked and it became fascinating. And by the end of it, I understood how to program in assembly without having actually touched the computer. So and that is a skill that has come in handy many times, because I used to be a test engineer. And if anybody's ever thinking of becoming a test engineer out there who's listening to this, firstly, go and get some therapy. But secondly, what you need to do is you need to learn how the stuff works one level below the developer. Right.
Can I just stop you here before you go any further? Could you tell us what a test engineer is? Because that's such a big, wide word, or word.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm thinking of a software test engineer. So the idea in a company that produces software is you have developers who, actually, let's start at the beginning. You have architects, software architects who design the software developers who code up the design into the actual code, into the program, and then you have test engineers who try and break it. So that when the
that was your skill, was breaking things then?
I've always been very good at breaking things from a very early age. I like playing with stuff. When I started college, there was a vending machine, one of the old button ones where analog, I'd say, probably rather than digital. And it took me about 5 days to work out that if you put a 50p coin in and keyed in a product that didn't exist while holding the coin release lever down, it magically credited you with a pound. So it kind of doubled your money. And so it's that kind of mindset that gets you far in test engineering. But the key thing I found is learn one level below and one level above the level of knowledge of your developer. And then that's kind of like you knowing how the engine works, and the developer only knows how to drive a car. And it means that it's much easier to find, that they've put together the instrument panel and the steering wheel and the gears, but they have no idea what's going on in the engine. And you can then look at it and say, I can see immediately that they don't understand how the gear stick is connected. And I bet if I do this, it'll break. And it does 9 times out of 10.
Did that make you Mr. Popular in your company? Because
test engineers are never popular, and you kind of have 2 approaches when you're going to be a test engineer. One is to be a kind of vivacious, sociable, friendly kind of, we want to hang out and talk to this guy person, and then you can get by with the fact that you are destroying their life's work. The other one is just to be a complete horrible nightmare of a person, and so they're just scared of you. So it's.
And which one were you?
Well, obviously, I'm the lovely, vivacious entertainer.
I knew, but I wanted you to say that so the audience would know. It'd be like, hanging out with your uncle. So having worked for companies where we have developed programs, and I met some of the test engineers, they're a different breed, because that's when they can break something, it's like a big moment for them. They're like, we did this. And I'm like, all right, calm down.
Oh, it's really satisfying. And then you have the arguments, right? You find a bug. And the developers go through, it's like the 5 stages of grief, right? So they have the, I can't reproduce it. And then it's the, I can reproduce it, but I don't think it's in my code. And then it's, I can reproduce it and I think it's in my code, but I don't think it can be fixed. Right. And then it's finally, they sort of go, oh yeah, I fixed it yesterday. So they go through, it's only 4 stages that I gave there, but that's what they go through. And they're all the same. They all, it's like, it's not a bug, it's a feature. It's like, yeah, this is a feature that's going to stop people from buying this product. So maybe we should remove it. Yeah.
So everybody needs it. So what do you do today? So because you're from what David said and from what we talked about before the show, it seems like still into the blockchain and go. So like, what's your, as my father would say when I was growing up, is what's your day job? So like, so what do you do? And then where do you, I guess if you want, we can talk a little about the blockchain. Where do you see it going in 5 or 10 years, other than as we made jokes about 30-second shorts on TikTok? So like, because you are one of the very few people, there's a handful that I would ask this question to, because you actually have a clue. And there's a bunch of others that learned about the blockchain 3 days ago. And when they tell me, I'm like, yeah, no, we're not moving to Pluto. Relax. So, but I'd be fascinated to hear just because of your knowledge.
Okay. Shall I start with the first question, which is what
you could start with it, whatever you like.
Okay. So that one is always hard because people see what I do in public, which is write articles, usually with sort of a certain element of sarcasm in them, which probably comes from my. And I make these videos where I walk through the woods.
Right.
Highly recommended. Highly recommended. We're going to put the link down here.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah, okay. There it is, guys.
There, you can't miss it. Subscribe and like. There you go. So,
yeah, smash that like button. Yeah,
that's right. We never say that, by the way. We do that so sarcastically. When people do like something, I'm like, David, someone liked our video. It's like our moms, but if somebody liked it.
It makes me feel physically uncomfortable to use those kind of phrases. I feel like I'm standing on the street corner with a coffee cup and a sign saying, please give me money.
Or carnival barker. Going, see the fat lady with the beard and and I'm like, so to me, it's like, if you like it, you'll hit the button. If you want to subscribe. We don't. You're adults. We don't have to guide you.
So
there.
You see, there's our generational weakness, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, you make these videos. This is your public life, you would say.
Yeah, and I've written 1 book, and I'm working on the 2nd one. So that's all the kind of what people see. But really, I started doing all that because I don't like looking for clients, because I do blockchain consultancy. And I've got a kind of very I'm going to sound like Liam Neeson if I'm not careful.
Okay, that's okay. Yeah, set of skills. We like it so far.
I've got a wide knowledge of the space, and then some really in-depth knowledge in particular areas. And I'm always expanding it. But you can't keep up with the rate at which things are moving along. So I don't know every single project and stuff out there, but I've got such a solid fundamental understanding of blockchain that I can pick it up pretty quickly if there's a specific need So I kind of get called in sometimes as a troubleshooter, or to kind of review and give my blessing to a project, and then I don't and tell them what they've done wrong, because that's the annoying test engineering me again. Or to help out do innovation stuff. Sometimes it's kind of like, we want to do this, there's nothing out there that does it. Can you think of a usually cheap and easy way to do it? And then you can say, well, which one are you going to pick? So that's the job that I do that pays the bills. And
is there a specific space that you play in more than another? Like that says, hey, we want to do this. It's not been done, whether it's cybersecurity or ticketing or sports, or is there a genre or a space that's that's your sweet spot? I mean, all of it is, but is there one that's you get more calls on than another?
It's varied a lot. And the ones I like the most are when they say, do you know anything about X? And I say, well, I know what they are. I've never deployed one, or looked at any source code for one, or sat down and tried to write a project plan for one. And they say, well, we can't find anybody. And then I go, okay, well, let's see how it goes. Give me a week to brush up on it. And those are always fun, because then I learn as well. So I'm kind of getting paid to learn, whereas half my day is me learning, not getting paid. So, but it really varies. And I try to pick projects that I'll learn from, that I think are going to be interesting, and in particular where I feel that I'm clicking with the people that I'm working with. And there's a lot of different personalities out there, and some people I just get on with like a house on fire, and other people it's just awkward. And and when you work as a wage slave, you just have to put up with the fact that you can't stand the guy at the desk next to you, and you really wish you were working with the person down the corridor. So and you kind of you suppress it, and we know that that's not good. So at least when I'm working for myself, I can turn around after a month and say, look, this I don't think this is working. It's me, not you. We should end this. And in other cases, it's like, no, please keep hiring me. If we don't have any money, okay, I'll reduce my rates a bit. No, I shouldn't have said that.
I'll tell you that. That's because he didn't mean that, and we can't edit that out. So we
I can never lower my rates. They are what they are.
They stay what they stay. Yeah, that's right.
So there's that side of things. But yeah, so all the public stuff is kind of that came out of discovering how much I hate sales.
Okay.
I had a startup. We had a product. It wasn't selling. I had a business development manager and a sales director, and they'd built up a huge database of potential clients. And I thought, and I should have realized this a year earlier. It was kind of one of these lessons you learn as a startup CEO,
right?
Is that you've got to do every job, at least for some period of time, just so you know what it is. And I started as a startup CEO, not knowing the difference between sales and marketing. And the short answer is marketing costs money and sales makes you money. But I had a month of cold calling, going through the entire database. I drew up a script, or in fact 3, so I could pick which one to follow, and called everybody in our sales database that were potential leads to see if they would buy, what it would take for them to buy, what it was that we were doing that they that wasn't getting them to hand over money and buy our product. And it turned out the answer was that they were all interested in free education in blockchain.
Gotcha.
That's why they were in our database, is because they talked to us, and I don't even think most of them were consciously taking that approach, but they were talking to us because they wanted to understand blockchain better, and we were giving them an hour's free education in a sales call. And
Gotcha.
None of them were interested in what we had to sell. So that firstly was heartbreaking, and secondly, cold calling is soul crushing.
That's old school. That's what we used to do back in the day.
Yeah.
That's old school.
I must have made 10,000 cold calls. I did that for 5 years for an investment house. So
right. Yeah. Oh,
it was one of those things that I used to call myself David, which is which was the name my mother gave me. Mm-hmm. But I insisted that everybody called me Dave in the office, because I couldn't be that same person. you know, that you get so damaged during the day with so much, you know, just
Rejection.
negativity. Yeah. And so I always had to put the other person on in order to do it. Absolutely soul destroying. And people lie to you. They lie to you before you start cold calling. They lie to you while you're doing it. Yeah, and they're just the people you work for. Yeah, so
the thing is, you can't blame the person on the other end of the phone. They didn't
absolutely
ask
not
to be called.
No,
but,
absolutely not.
But yes, sometimes you hang up the phone and you just sit there looking at the wall, thinking, you know, God, make this stop. My heart just stops ticking at this point. I will die a happy man, you know, because I don't have to make that next call. And then it just sort of clicked that, hang on a minute. There must be a better way. And of course, at that point, LinkedIn was full of people saying inbound marketing, you know, and be a brand. So I thought, well, let's just give that a go. And
but you are sort of a brand, really, Keir, aren't you? Because I mean, did you give yourself a blockchain Gandalf as a name, or is that are people actually, do that just to wind you up, or because of the hat, which we can't see today because of the headphones?
Yeah, and the kids have lost it actually. So I need to find it.
Well, we're going to get some new kids. That's all I can say. No.
Well, I've got 8, so I
okay.
Maybe I can trade them like in Uno or something.
I always tell them when we go to Disney, I said, the policy is now Disney, if you don't like the child you have, you can take a different one. And so that's their new slogan.
But for amusement parks. Yeah.
There you go. Right. I figure it works out well.
So back to the brand, Keir. Was I'm fascinated because blockchain, was that a tongue-in-cheek joke to yourself or about yourself, or?
I didn't come up with a name. It's the person who came up with that is a guy called Anthony Day, who is on LinkedIn, is a blockchain influencer.
Do we have to call him out now?
No, I'd say you won't mind me mentioning his name. I hope
Hi, Anthony.
Anthony, be our next guest. Be our next guest, Anthony. Calling to you. So.
All right. Well, he might be. It's always worth a try. But he came up with the term blockchain Gandalf because I'm walking through the woods and I've got a beard. It wasn't as long as this when he came up with that, and I hope it was a reference to me seeming to be wise, Anthony. But and then I initially resisted it, but you kind of have to have a sort of a hashtag.
Yep.
And
well, to be honest, that's how I found you, and I was fascinated by that. I thought, well, I've got to watch one of these things, you know, and I've watched everything that you did, and I learned so much because I was, you know, I got sort of the NFT bug, and then this whole royalty thing. I learned so much from just listening to you talking about the royalties, and you know, and how it's, you know, a lot of the, shall we say, larger marketplaces on the internet, you know, don't tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth as regards royalties.
Yeah, so, it's a tricky business, and there's always a good approach to take is to think, what is this other person's agenda? And this is something that I came to late in life. I wish I'd known it when I was actually working in corporations, because I think it would have helped me, which is as an engineer, you don't think that way. You sort of think objectively, and you think that everybody's like you, and that everybody's trying to row in the same direction. And but the fact is that even software engineers who are focused on the code and don't care about human interaction actually have an agenda. They just don't realize it. And when you start thinking, why is this person saying that? What is the subtext behind it? Why are they acting the way they are? Not immediately going for the obvious answer, but trying to put yourself in their shoes, then suddenly the light goes on and you understand a lot more what's going on. And that you know, people often say, what's the advice you'd give yourself if you could go back to yourself when you're 18? I think that would be one of the pieces I would hand on, which is stop thinking everybody's like you, because they're not. So anyway, there you go.
So now let me ask you.
You were going to ask about the hat, weren't you? And
we'll
I have a quick
ask about. Please tell us about the hat.
So the quick answer there is that the hat came after the hashtag blockchain Gandalf, and somebody sent it to me, and I have no idea who it is. It just arrived in the post, and it's it had a leaflet in it from the manufacturer. So somebody ordered it from a manufacturer in Spain and had it sent to me. And it's actually a really good quality one. It's thick, handmade wool felt. So my son's ringing me now. I'm going to hang up on him. Yeah, it's a good quality thing. It's not just something that, it's not a novelty Halloween thing from a 5 and dime store. It's a proper
Gandalf hat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I felt
Very
like
cool.
I had to wear it in some of the videos, but it's not entirely a great thing.
That's cool. So let me ask you this. So if someone is listening to this and they have a blockchain project somewhere on the planet, because on you patent law and consulting and the whole 9 yards, how do they get a hold of you?
Well, I've got a unique name, so you can Google Keir Finlow-Bates, and my email's publicly available. The best thing actually is to message me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Just go to LinkedIn, type Keir Finlow-Bates, make sure you get the E and the I the right way around. And
we'll spell it properly in the heading here on YouTube. And when we do the podcast, you get to be a podcast and live on YouTube with us. So we'll make sure we spell everything correctly. And David will make fun of me if I misspell it. So I'll make sure I do it correctly.
No, that's one dyslexic talking to another, Steve. So
that's very true. Copy, cut, and paste is a wonderful thing. Yes, that's
yeah.
So
that's the easiest way. Message me on LinkedIn. Don't start your message with trying to sell me something.
Yeah, I hate those. I know what you're saying.
Yeah. It's and it's kind of, message me on LinkedIn and explain what it is you're trying to do and what it can do for me. It's as easy as that. It's like,
well, I'm amazed you responded to my request to come on to the 2oldfarts.vip show today. So
I get the message if someone says, hey, this is what we're doing, this is how we think you would fit in, this is what you'll get from it. Then I probably say yes. If on the other hand, it's kind of a 6 screenfuls of stuff going on about themselves, and I'm left at the end of it thinking, well, that's very nice, but why have you sent this to me? Then the answer is probably going to be no. And so because I do get a lot of messages, I do read them all, and I respond to most of them. I don't know what I'm going to do when the rate goes up tenfold, which it may do one day, because generally you just kind of, if you keep producing material and content, then you end up with more people messaging you. Maybe at some point I'll have to get a virtual assistant or something like that.
But it's a blessing, and it could be a blessing or a curse depending on who's messaging you and what they're asking. Like this, definitely, I know is a curse for you, but the other people is a nice blessing. So we know that context. So now, because you're intimately involved in the space and you see things evolving, probably more so than even some of the bankers, probably not governments, but none of them are going to tell us what's going on. So where do you see this? Like whether you on a 5-year chart or a 10-year, like if I said, if I want to do something in an investment in blockchain, so to speak, where would you say, you know what, I think this is where I would head, or I think this is where it's heading, or it needs this to get to the next step to be kind of, where everybody's like, oh, blockchain. Yeah, sure. It's great.
Well, there's sort of 2 things there, right? There's the, where's the technology going to go? And the second one is, where's the market going to go?
Right.
And that is one of the downsides of being in blockchain, is that I'm a technology guy.
Cool.
And I've had to learn about trading, and I'm not going to give any investment advice. I'm a lousy trader. I just get completely nervous. There are plenty of good people out there who are, because it's the problem I have with trading is you can be, I tackle problems intellectually and I go at it logically, and it's kind of, you do everything, you analyze the problem, and there's too many variables, and you try to work out which ones are relevant, and then you come up with a theory, and then you test it, and it's wrong. And it's so as a mathematician,
because it's basically just is it red or is it black?
Yeah, well, it's like I remember reading, I can't remember the book, but the guy was talking, it might have been Taleb actually, about a guy who was trading green lumber, and was in Chicago Mercantile, and he was like the leading trader he was the one who everybody followed because he knew his stuff. And then when he was talked to, it turned out he didn't know what green lumber was. He thought it was wood that was painted green. So because as a trader, you're 1 or 2 or 3 steps removed. You don't actually care that it's orange juice or pork bellies, or you've become familiar with the way the marketplace moves, which isn't the things that are being sold on it. And I think that's the thing that hit me with trading, is that it's just another world.
So the market's going one way, and you think the technology is going with it, or?
Yeah, so people talk about how crypto, because that's the word they used to describe it, has these cycles, and 2 years before the halvening on Bitcoin is the winter, and 2 years after is the a year after is the boom, and watch the stock to flow model and blah blah, and it's like
the game of crypto.
Yeah.
Well, it's all the financial advisors got to get paid for something, because they have no clue, because it's a brand new algorithm, and all it is an algorithm, right? So they might as well just sell you. I have friends that would buy it. The joke was, hey, you should just buy it high and sell it low. And I'm like, there you go. That's good. That's good advice. So, but it's a different, that's why when I asked about the market, I just meant like a space. But so on the technology side, because this is not an investment show, so we wouldn't ask. But on the technology side, since you're a technologist and a mathematician, where do you see it going in that respect? And whether it's a 20-year perspective or tomorrow perspective, either is fine, or both, because it'd be interesting to hear how you see it, because you have these different clients that are coming to you with these different things.
Well, I mean, I think the near future is going to be improved usability. So it's a lot better than it used to be, that's for sure. Things like MetaMask are much more usable than the original wallet that was included in Bitcoin, and the initial Bitcoin software that was released by Nakamoto, and a lot more secure. So there's a lot more people working in the space. They have a lot more knowledge about security. Unfortunately, there's also a lot of newcomers who come in and think, hey, this is cool, and they don't know enough about the issues with cryptography and security programming, and they make some pretty fundamental mistakes. But it's only a couple of 100 million that gets lost when they do that kind of thing. So, so I think usability, because they're going to start realizing that there's this untapped market out there that they're not reaching because it's just unusable. And like going from DOS to Windows. Or Linux going from his.
That's a great illustration. But where are we then? Are we halfway in between DOS and Windows? Because all of my colleagues at Noisy Panda and things that we just talked, they all have their different disciplines, and I'm sort of, for my sins, slightly fascinated by NFTs. So I get a lot of questions that I can't answer. And I have to sort of go to people like yourself and double check. But everybody says, oh, it's horrible, it's lumpy, it's like DOS. So when will we get to Windows?
Oh, over time. It's going to get better. And the thing is, at the moment, there's this problem when you are going to try and make a profit, which is that there's what you should be doing, and in the long term, and there's what will make you money in the short term. And making money in the short term always wins out over doing the right thing in the long term. And this is, I have a video where I talk about, you have 2 projects. One's got a bunch of technologists building a great technology, and then there's a small team marketing it. And then you have another team, it's 100% marketers, and they're talking about what they're going to do. And the one with all the marketers and no developers raises more money than the one with the brilliant developers and a small marketing team and a small marketing budget. And that's because they're not pitching the story well to investors. And so this is the same issue here, is that working on security, they've now realized that's important because of all the massive losses, and that's scary. So they'll put some effort into trying to make sure that the things they come up with are a bit more secure. Probably not as much as they should, but and now we're getting to the point where, well, you do need to put money into the usability. So you need to actually get some UX experts in, because that's a way you can compete against the other things out there.
And
Whereas, for example,
will UX experts bring more security issues then, Keir, or not?
well, they're going to open it up to people who are more likely to do things wrong. So in that sense, yes, it's kind of, if we use an analogy with cars, when cars first came out, they could only be afforded by eccentric aristocrats who had a fascination with the technology, and there weren't many of them. So, you didn't need speed limits and traffic lights and stuff like that. And then they became mass produced, and suddenly any old idiot who doesn't even know how they work can drive around. And we had a whole problem. I don't know if you remember, there was a time where they required a man with a red flag to walk in front of a car.
Steve can remember that. He's old.
I remember that. And here's what's really scary. And I think it's from, I want to say 1905 in New York City. I think I read something a few years ago, that law where a guy had not a red flag, but a lantern at night, had to walk in front of your car.
That's right.
That law is still on the books.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So is that why the traffic moves so slowly in New York?
Yeah. That and 5,000 other reasons, but yes, that's why.
40 million other reasons.
Yeah, there's like 40 million other reasons, and people don't know. If you've never driven in New York City, I can just tell people, just think of bumper cars when you were a kid. Now you know how to drive in New York City, and you're good. Because that's really what it is. Don't go there with a new car. Go there with a car you don't care about, because someone's going to hit you. And I mean, not like a big boom, but a scratch or this, and you just go.
Yeah, I would never drive in the city. I was in Chennai just trying to cross the road, and all the other people are walking across, and I'm thinking, you wouldn't have to tell me that there are a lot of people here who believe in reincarnation the way that they're doing this. I just couldn't bring myself to step into the road. And you have to apparently do it like Frogger, where you just look one lane at a time.
But at least in New York, we have the red guy and white hand thing going for you. But that as a suggestion, and when I tell people, when you're there, if there's no car, you go, because even though there's a red light, they may or may not stop. You just go. It's like literally you go, and they're looking at me like, "Are you crazy?" And I'm like, "No, because we need to get places." In New York, it's very like, get out, you're in my way, you're in my, move.
Yeah.
And then you go somewhere else, and if you cross the street when it's red and there's no cars, and if a cop sees you, but do you know what you just did? Nah, I crossed the street. There was a red hand. There was no car. Can't go. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's like, in the city you just constantly go. It's a different world. And then if traffic's just backed up and stopped, people will cross whatever, cut between the car. It's like, we got places.
I got written up for jaywalking in Madison, Wisconsin. And
there you go.
I had to ask the cop to explain to me what I was being, what did I do wrong? It's like, in Europe, you just, as long as you do it safely, you can cross anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, in Holland, in Holland they do, but in Germany they don't, of course, because everybody stands and
it's also
but the fact is that in Germany you can still walk across the road. I mean, it's not recommended that you walk across the road 10 meters away from a zebra crossing. But in Madison, you have to walk to the corner and cross. And the little white guy, you have to run across, because the time gap for getting across some of those roads is like, it's for Olympic sprinters, and then you've got half an hour of the red hand. Because
it's Madison, Wisconsin, they have nothing to do. What are they doing? They're gonna they're gonna pull over a cow? They see somebody across the street, they get all excited. What do you, like 20 cops probably converged on you, and it's very exciting.
Oh, come on, it's Madison's the city, it's not. It's
as many people in that city lived in my apartment building in New York. So
can I just say at this point, there are other places available to be lived in the US.
There's no other place. I don't
because we're not going to get any sponsorship from that state now at all.
I'm okay with that.
Well, actually, Wisconsin's fine. They're happy if you just mention them. It doesn't have to be good news.
That's true. Just Wisconsin's got great cheese. Good. We've mentioned it. Send us our $20. We're good.
They're sort of, aren't they like, they're not the bottom of the league. I think Nebraska is the one that's kind of the forgotten state. But
no, there's a whole bunch of forgotten states. Are you kidding? So you got Wisconsin, then you have you have South Dakota, North Dakota, then you'd have Nebraska. I'm thinking of all the states that nobody really cares about. I mean that in a good way. But Montana, people like I lived in Montana for a while. Montana was pretty cool.
But people have heard of Montana, yeah.
I like Montana.
There's another one that's kind of.
It's potatoes.
Nothing about Iowa, yeah.
Yeah, it's like going to Maine. It's like we have friends that are like, we're going to go to Maine. I'm like, why? Yeah, it's like, we're going to go to New Hampshire. Once again, why? Now, Vermont, you get syrup. I'm like, I can get Vermont. And then you go down to the real states. But I'm just, there's certain states, it's just sort of like, why are you there?
Yeah.
So, you know.
I drove around Lake Ontario back in early 2001.
Okay.
And that was an experience. I mean, I went to see Niagara Falls and Buffalo and Rochester.
Oh, Buffalo, there's a place. And Rochester, look at you. You're a city slicker.
Yeah.
So,
but once you get sort of east of, and it's city slicker, but when you get east of Rochester, and you just sort of, and I spent a night in a town called Watertown.
Watertown, New York.
Yeah, and it's.
I have a friend who lives there.
Ah, okay, because I was only there for 20 hours, and it felt like I was there for 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's Watertown. That's Watertown, New York.
Just seemed to sort of, something funny happened with time. It was an interesting road trip, though. I'm not sure I'd recommend it to anybody else. But,
and talking of something funny happening with time, we're getting to the end of this conversation today.
That means you'll have to come back.
Oh, absolutely.
We won't ask you this live on the air. We'll wait till we cut off and ask if you want to come back. And then this way, if you say yes or no, we'll either be surprised or disappointed privately.
So, nobody will know. Yeah, okay. That's a good move. You should follow that. Yeah.
That's, I know, right?
But yeah, we'll just try and keep it around this time, mostly because the people who listen to this or watch this or watch it, I was going to say watch it, their wash cycle is already done. So they now come back to switch the computer off probably. So yeah, we try to keep it around about this sort of period of time. And we will speak to you after we've pushed the goodbye button. But I'd like to thank you very, very much for being on the show today. Absolutely fascinating. Stephen, thank you. You've managed to get New York in again.
That's my job. I get paid by the city. Every time I mention it, I get $1. So I got to make a living. But no, seriously, we'd love to have you back. We'll discuss it when we say, but thank you so much for your time and fascinating, and still want to dig into more stuff with you if we ever can do that. That'd be awesome.
Well, it's been a great 53 minutes. So
there you go.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Guys, cheers.